Geocachomaniacs.
Geo Gearheads.
Well, good evening and welcome to Geo Gearheads. You know, this is a weekly show about geocaching and geolocation games. I'm Chris of the Northwest, along with our illustrious host, who may or may not join us this evening, Daryl W4.
Yeah, and the oddly illuminated host as well tonight. It's one of those kind of nights.
Isn't it, though? I've got a big storm brewing outside, so I hope I don't lose power.
Oh, well, cross our fingers you don't lose power as well, or something worse than power, like, you know, your whole house.
Or, you know, water tightness of the house, yes.
Yes, because that has been happening a lot lately.
Water tightness? Yes, you've had some serious water issues.
Fortunately, it's about an hour drive from me, but I know that area, so it's like, yeah,
Boy,
yeah.
I watched the video of the dam failing. And boy,
that was impressive. But we are talking about Earth caches tonight, which kind of goes along with dams failing. And to do that, we've brought in our resident land monkey to talk about Earth caches.
You don't want me as a resident land monkey. Nobody wants that.
Well, if I have it, if I have someone to do that, that means I don't have to do it.
There you go. Awesome.
Oh.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Daryl, for bringing me back. Chris, good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you as always. This is what I do on the other half of the day.
Yeah, no, it's like a peek behind the curtain of your life.
Don't do that either. Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to talk about all kinds of things Earth caching. So if anyone has any questions or comments in the chat, make sure to drop those in there. Wet Coaster is asking how everyone's doing on the Earthcache Fizzy Grid.
Ooh, good question.
You know, I have no idea. I don't even try to.
I've gone and looked at mine a while ago. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I've never even tried an Earthcache Fizzy Grid, so I'm no help there.
I think it's a big thing in Ontario because I'd never heard about it until I was connected with some of the Ontario geocachers and started seeing them post about it. And so I looked into it using Project GC, and I've got a lot of work to do before I can complete a Earthcache Fizzy Grid. But there seems to be some combinations that are super rare and make it difficult to complete.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And Earth caches generally aren't that difficult on either the terrain or the difficulty, or you run into the extreme where they're very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot in between.
Well, I've actually intentionally, after I went through that process and saw, here are the ones that are where there's gaps, the ones that there aren't any, or not any in my region. My last two Earth caches I've put out were intentionally made more difficult. Like they actually have some very difficult questions because I wanted them to fill those spots. Blame Canada. I blame Cache Canada.
Blame Cache Canada for the Earthcache Fizzy Grid. That's Wet Coaster's response.
I blame Dave for pretty much everything. So that's
Well, that makes it easy.
Yeah.
I was going to say, is that just a general safe rule that anything that goes wrong, we can blame Dave?
Yep. I think so.
I'll take it. Oh, here's a good one for Ian. What makes a good Earth cache nowadays?
Interesting. I'd be interested in hearing everybody else's opinion on that for sure.
Not a
obviously glacial erratic.
Yeah.
Or
waterfalls. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say not the the fens that I had 20,000 of pop up all at once. I can't remember what they're called anymore. The river height measuring station things.
Oh
I can't remember what those are called now, but yeah, that's like every one of these things was getting an earth cache.
The river gauges.
Yeah, gauging station. That's what it was called.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that kind of stuff. Not very good. It is very, very tough to get an earth cache out though in this area because there's not a lot available that's already been done. That has not already been done.
Right.
And as I understand, it's gotten a lot more difficult to get the descriptions past the reviewers.
Oh, has it?
Yeah,
Through
they're looking for a lot more quality, and it has to be more unique than it was before. I'd seen several where people were essentially just copying the information from each other and tweaking it for the area, and they're actually watching out for that now.
They're also looking at the quality of the questions you're asking. Like your question needs to actually educate the person who's trying to attempt your earth cache. And it doesn't have to be a hard education. It can be a simple one, but there needs to be an educational quality to the questions you ask. You can't just do the what color was the rock and what was the name on the bench beside it, right? Like you can't do that kind of stuff anymore. You'll find some grandfathered earth caches that have those kinds of questions, but they won't let that slide anymore, which is good, I think.
I agree, because it was getting to be almost like the problems that we've had with virtuals when they grandfathered those. You were getting too many of these kind of junk earth caches. What's the one that we always used in this area was those gauging stations, because we had at least 20 pop up in 1 week. And it was all exactly the same thing, estimate the flow. What is the height of the river? Yeah. Some of them had a reference to a website where you could go to find the previous data.
Okay.
But that's what all of these things were. And we were getting a ton of them posting on a weekly basis.
That's not good.
Yeah. So they needed to do something to clean it up and make it more interesting, because earth caches got boring and we stopped going out for them for a while.
Oh,
not that it was we won't find it if we're in the area, but we actually used to get excited and go out for first to finds on them.
Right. So there's nothing really interesting drawing you to it anymore because it's the same question. You're going to see the same kind of thing. There's nothing, no innovation there.
Yeah, and most of the time it wasn't even in a good spot. It's like pull over at the shoulder and try to get out and do it.
Yeah.
Not very good.
So I guess going back to the question, what makes a good earth cache nowadays? My answer would be innovation. Like try and do something different, try and teach something new. And I noticed somebody else had said, well, everything's been done, but it hasn't. It was Caching Dead. They said there's only so many things that can be done. Theoretically, yes, but there's different ways to approach the same situation, and it can be interesting. You can learn a new nuance about something that you might think, oh, it's another waterfall. I know everything about waterfalls, but maybe there's something unique or unusual that you can highlight about that location or the how the geology ended up the way it is.
Ideally for me, an earth cache is something that's not so obvious that I see it, but visible when it's pointed out. So it's the subtle things that you don't notice. That's what makes what makes geocaching a lot of fun, is finding those hidden gems.
Right.
So that to me is one of the big things. And of course, anything in a spectacular location is going to be good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
and that's true of an earth, or of any cache rather. If you put a lousy cache in a beautiful location, people are still going to go find that micro behind the stop sign.
Right. Well,
and they're going to love it.
Yeah. and on that note, with respect to earth caches, you can take an example like that. You can say, well, there's been so many earth caches done about a particular type of thing. So you could look at oh gosh, I can't even remember the term right now, but like when rock crystallizes, when lava crystallizes underwater, and you get the columnar basalt. There we go. I had to run through the process in my head. There's a lot of columnar basalt earth caches, but they're still allowing them. And you can go to a location like the Giant's Causeway in Ireland, and you go to a columnar basalt earth cache that is unlike any other columnar basalt earth cache. Or you can go to another one that I have recently used as a highlight, which is one by a local cacher in Washington, MC3 Cats, in the Tri-Cities area, where there's a spectacular wall where the columnar basalt is huger than I've ever seen it anywhere else, which again, it's something innovative. And then he talks about it from a different perspective, and you learn a little something new. So, you can always find a different spin on it and try and keep it interesting.
Tick Magnet says that all Earth caches are interesting. He likes them all.
Nice. There you go. Man after my own heart.
Good answer. Good answer.
One of the problems that we've been talking about on and off lately has been with the newer cachers that we've seen coming into the game. A lot of them very recently, since the pandemic began, and they simply don't really know how to Earth cache. The result has exacerbated a problem that I've seen previously, but I think it was 9 logs I had to delete all in the same week from people who logged the cache, never contacted me, and never contacted back.
Yeah.
So what is the process that you use when you have to do something like that?
So to notify a noob?
Well, not necessarily to notify a noob, but when you run into people who aren't meeting the requirements.
Okay. So for me, what I usually do is, I'm not as mean as Chris, so I give people about a week, and and after a week, if I haven't seen an answer, and honestly, this is also dependent on me remembering to do this, because the last couple of months I have been so busy with work that you could probably slip one by on me with my Earth caches, and you'll get lucky. But generally, I give people about a week, and if I haven't seen any answer come in within a week, I will. I've got a little copy and paste note that I send them out that says, "Hey, I haven't seen your answers, and here's a link to explain how Earth caches work. In order for your log to stand, you will need to submit answers to the questions. I hope you took notes." Oh, so yeah, so that I send that out, and then I give it a, and I in the note I say, I'll give you another week to give me the answers. If you haven't sent it back, I'm sorry, but I'll probably have to delete your fine. So that usually lights a little fire.
That's exactly what Ian said
Hmm.
on a boat. I give him a week, send him a message, then with a 1 week warning, and then delete it.
There you go.
I do something similar, which is I'll email them. If I don't get a response, I'll delete the log and email them again. Well, I don't email them, use messaging, within the app. Right. But I'll delete the log and send them a note that says, "Hey, you missed these requirements. I'm afraid I have to delete your log," delete the log, and then send them another note that says, "Hey, you still haven't sent in the requirements. Please fulfill those requirements," and then log the cache again.
Yeah.
And that's if I don't get a reply.
Yeah. Can you bring up Francis's comment?
Oops.
Yeah, that one. So this is a really good point, right? And so some people might look at it. So for those who are listening on audio, Francis is saying, "I hate when an Earth cache is written in a way that you almost need a degree in geology to complete the requirements." And this brings up a good point. So I talked earlier about having intentionally placing a couple of Earth caches with a high difficulty level, and there's difficult questions. But what I intentionally did is those questions are explained completely in the description, and they're difficult because one of them, well, you got to sit down and do some math. So it's a little more difficult. Another one, you need to go, most of the questions you can answer in the field, but the last couple, you need to go home and you need to look at a topo map and you need to make a couple of comparisons. So it it bumps the difficulty up a bit, but you don't need a degree in geology. So if someone's writing an earth cache and it's that difficult to understand, then they're not doing a good job of writing the earth cache. It even says in the earth cache guidelines that you should be writing them at a high school level of understanding. So if you're not doing that, then you're just making it unnecessarily hard, and you're kind of being a jerk. So
Kind of along those lines, though, Wet Coaster is saying that he wishes the Earth Cache Academy was still running courses.
yeah,
And I remember those, but that was a while ago.
that was a couple of years ago. I went through the whole program, absolutely loved it. I've heard rumors that there's a possibility they could bring it back, but um, the GSA would need enough funding to do it. So it would either be enough geocachers decide to pool the money to support it on an annual basis, or they get funding from some other source in order to be able to do it. But I miss it very much. I think it was fantastic.
Back to the logging, though. Houston, Texas Dave says he's seen a few new people just take a picture of the location and get a smiley. We had an event this week and had a newbie there. I helped him understand how earth caches work.
Awesome. Way to go, Houston, Texas Dave. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, and we do want to encourage the newbies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going back to an earlier comment, G Nice has just logged 5 of your earth caches since you're not checking.
Right. Fine. I'm gonna go check it now.
I think I've told the story that I got a DNF on one of my earth caches because somebody, says, well, I'm on vacation. I don't want to do homework in order to find a geocache.
Then don't do the geocache.
And they went to the effort to put a DNF on it, which I thought was interesting, but
Just to make a point.
But they're again reaching out and helping them. Apparently they knew what to do, right? If they knew there was homework involved. But yeah, I found that very interesting.
Yeah.
Caching Dead New York says, write the cache page in understandable terminology.
Mm-hmm.
I did my very best to try and get Chris of the Northwest to delete my log on his earth cache, but I still couldn't get it done. So
that's when you just need to grab his username and password and do it for him.
Yeah.
It should be easy enough.
I provided him some creative answers on his earth cache.
And you emailed those to me. You didn't put them on the webpage.
That's true. That's true.
Wet Coaster says, if an earth cache requires you to remark about the area and its dense fog, can you then log a DNF?
You know what, though? That's a good question. It's a good question, because if you're supposed to be making observations and the weather conditions prevent you from being able to do that, like, so Chris of the Northwest, your earth cache,
yes,
if the weather is inclement, you can't do it.
Exactly.
I was just going to say, this immediately brings to mind Mount St. Helen. When I went out there, you couldn't see the mountain.
It was gone. Was this after
just
May 1980?
No. Well, it was, but
40 years ago, oddly enough.
It was exactly 10 years ago this August, I think. Wait, was it August? I don't remember the first celebration.
I want to say it was August.
Yeah. So it was like, we went out there, you couldn't see anything because it was, in cloud.
Right.
Like the entire park was in clouds.
Ian's response to Gary: you can log a DNF anytime you want. You don't have to wait for a special occasion. That's funny. I love that. But back to Gary's point, I think that's a good point. If the weather is bad, if I can't make the observations properly, I'm going to take one of two routes. If I know enough about the area and I can tell what they're getting at, I will actually comment in my answer. So not in my log, but in my answer to the CO, I'll say, hey, look, the weather conditions are really bad. And, and I will also send a picture. I'll say, but, either, you were asking me to estimate the height of the mountain, so I used a topo map, or, I'll I'll somehow express that here's the answers. I figured out the answers you are looking for. Here they are, but I couldn't actually make the observations. And if they decide to delete my log, and I'll say that, if you want to delete my log, fair enough. Just let me know, please. Because sometimes, that'll screw up people going towards milestones and such. So, give a person a heads up. But I have been honest that way on a couple of Earth caches that I've done where I still figured out the answer, even though I couldn't make the observations in the way intended, and the COs honored it. So I think generally just be honest about it. Like, make an attempt. That's always my bottom line with my Earth caches. Just show me you tried.
Well, and I think that brings up a very important point. Generally, is always let the finder or not finder know when you're deleting the log. Don't just delete the logs.
Give them some sort of heads up. Yeah.
Right. And that's going to go a long way too. If it has to go to geocaching.com, you've let them know what the situation is and why you've deleted the log.
Yep.
Good way to avoid any bad marks with the team at GCHQ.
Yeah, well, this is right. You don't want to get to the point where things are getting escalated to them. It's like
Right.
at work or at home. Let's compare it to at home. Do you want to be the child that's always going to mom? I mean, maybe you do. I don't know.
You get more attention that way.
Yeah, I guess. Maybe not
Oh,
the
yeah,
attention
but
you
it's
want.
not the right kind of attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I never said anything about the type of attention. Just you get more attention.
So, so Ian's agreeing. He's saying, "Yep, all of my Earth caches require a photo and effort, not necessarily 100% correct answers." And way to go, Ian. That's exactly the spirit.
That is an excellent point. Is typically if it looks like they've put in the effort and they were actually there and tried, then no, you didn't get it right. Here's what you should have had, but thank you for the effort. You get to keep the log.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously people who have gone and tried to cheat on it, and those I get a little bit stingier with.
I've gotten to know very well the Wikipedia page that lines up with my Earth cache, and you can see
we don't have those.
When the text has been clearly just copied from there. I'm like, no, you weren't there, because what's there is different than what you find in Wikipedia.
And Ian says it's or that people don't realize it's pretty easy to tell when you're clearly just guessing.
Yep.
Or copying off of some sign or someone else.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's the exact same answer I got from this person.
Well, and I don't have problems with that, especially because a lot of people go as groups.
Well, if people are going together, that's fine. In fact, if people are going together, I would rather send me one set of answers and say who you were with.
Yes. I love when I see those.
Yeah.
But likewise, if you're going as a group, don't let one person who doesn't know how to read the Earth cache description send in those answers.
Yeah. Make it the best person at Earth caching. Make it their job.
Yeah. Not the only person in the car that's willing to send an email.
There you go. Going back to our earlier topic, can you grab the comment from the Caching Dead about terms and names? Yeah. So back to earlier what we were saying about the quality of Earth caches and how to make a decent Earth cache and how to do the write-up well. The Caching Dead says, and when using terms or names that are uncommon, add a brief definition of the terms or the names. And that is so important. Like, you are going to, if you're writing an Earth cache, you are more than likely going to at some point be using a geological term or an acronym or some expression that is not common in spoken English. Anytime you're doing that, you should define what that term means, because again, the whole idea is to make this an educational experience for people. So when you just load up with jargon, think about it this way. If you were picking up a book to read, do you want to pick up a book to read that's just loaded with jargon, or do you want to pick up a book to read that you can actually enjoy reading? So take it that way. But yeah, that's great feedback, Caching Dead. Thank you.
Well, I was just thinking as you were talking about that, I love doing hyperlinks, but I'm not sure that this is one time I would use that. But I like the idea of hyperlinking those terms so people could click through, especially if you're finding it's something that has a audio file with a pronunciation.
That works great on a phone, but not so well on a GPS.
Exactly, and that's kind of where I'm going with that. So I really like the idea of an audio file, though, because how many times have you been going through the text at an Earth cache going, I have no idea how to pronounce that. And you find out you've pronounced it completely the wrong way.
It's not pronounced Ganese. Yeah. It looks like Ganese. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that concept. I'm not sure if it's such a good idea, but if you put the definition in with maybe a link to an audio file, or for more information than I've provided, click on this link to get the something like that. I think could work well.
Yeah.
And one of the fears is that so many times those Earth cache descriptions get so long that they end up getting cropped in a GPS.
Right.
So you end up with the answer or with the questions off the screen where you can't read them anymore.
Well, that's another good point. I have seen a few different approaches, and I've tried a few different approaches with my Earth caches. And one of them is, do you put the questions first or do you put the questions last? What do you guys think?
I know a lot of people who do put them first, but I like to put them last. And I think that might be part of why I've had problems recently.
Why is that, Daryl?
People don't read descriptions.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. All right.
Especially when you're the new cacher who doesn't understand Earth caching yet. If you just start reading that description, oh, it's a bunch of garbage text. I'm just going to go find it. Okay, I'm here. Goodbye. Well, This is the thing I don't understand about these new cachers. When we had this conversation earlier. These new cachers.
Let me tell you something about you rotten kids.
And most of these people did have the premium membership already. But most of these new cachers who log the Earth caches without doing any of the requirements had the premium membership, and only one of them got back to me and was absolutely surprised and flabbergasted that he had to do something more than log the cache. Even if they've only found traditionals, how would they think that this is okay with an Earth cache to just claim it and not actually find a log to sign? So I am totally lost as to what's going through their mind. It just hasn't connected. So if anyone knows, what's going on here, let me know, because I'd love to understand, to know how to explain this to them better.
Yeah, that's a good point, Daryl. And I'm curious if anybody in the chat has theories on the logic flow that results in doing that. Yep, I got to the coordinates, found.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't understand, and I want to understand to better help them. But I think by putting those questions up top, I probably would have been in better situation. And I recently had some experienced cachers who skipped some of the requirements because they didn't understand they had to answer all the questions. So I think by putting that up there at the top, it would probably eliminate some of those problems.
Yeah.
So maybe you put a little brief description and then put the questions and then the full text. And I think that's probably the safer way to go.
Right. Well, and it gets even more complicated when you travel. Can you bring up Gary's comment there? It says several Earth caches I found in Europe are in the local language and then English. Some had 3 or 4 languages, and I think that was stemming off of some other comments earlier up in the chat from RG and Houston, Texas, Dave, talking about multiple languages. The rule is the cache can and should be first of all in the native language of whatever country the cache is in. So in scenarios where you're in, so in Germany, the cache is going to be in German. It doesn't have to be in any other language, but often the cache owner will then put it in another language, and often that includes English. I have one Earth cache of mine in Cuba, and it is in Spanish first, and then it's in English to follow that requirement. But yeah, it's a good thing to know if you're traveling. There's no guarantee your Earth caches and virtuals are going to be in English. So,
Well, and
Google Translate's helpful.
have you done any of the Google Translates on Earth caches to find out if they translate well?
I have. They translate. I don't know about the word well.
That was my fear. This is getting into a lot of that language that typically you can't get the automated translations to do well. It's specific enough that it doesn't really work.
Yeah, well, and of all languages, German is of course compounds the problem by compounding the words. So,
yeah, not one of the easier languages to translate for sure.
No, but it's a good thing to be aware of. And we there was comments in the chat earlier, and I apologize, I can't remember who made the comments, but about getting multiple logs in German. Yeah, so sorry, I'll jump in there. Ian says, I'd require a photo of every single person or 25 unique personal items.
Well, that's in response to Houston, Texas, Dave.
You found it.
25 Germans sending the answers in German language for the Earth cache.
Yeah. I get it. If English isn't your first language and you're traveling, but I think common sense would say, send the answer in the language of the country that the Earth cache is in, because I don't know, it seems kind of odd.
Or do both.
And yeah,
do a submission in your native language. Here's what I'm trying to say, and here's present them with the native language. Here's what the translator that I used said.
Right. And just say you're using, like Gary said, Wet Coaster says here, I had an event in Spain, wrote the description in English, used Google Translate, and then had a native Spanish speaker correct it for me. Good for you, man. That's going the extra mile.
Yeah. And this would be awesome if you could go caching in one of these other countries with a native speaker.
Yes.
And I just love that idea, so that you have someone who knows the terrain and you're not going to get yourself in trouble. But of course, it's also a lot of fun to go caching with people who actually know the area. William says that we should try Finnish.
Yeah, that would be probably even more difficult.
Does he just want us to be done with the show?
I think he does.
He said
we should be done. But Houston, Texas, Dave suggests a Russian Earth cache.
Yeah, I've done a Russian Earth cache.
You just went through Earth cache quickly. It's different.
Right. Yeah. No, when we visited Russia 2 years ago, I think it was. Yeah, we did an Earth cache there. That was tricky, and honestly, it's like, you know what, you're gonna get as good as Google Translate gives, because that's the best I can do. But it seemed to be honored, so that was good, and it was in English as well, which was very helpful.
That will definitely help.
Yeah.
Another thing that I thought we should probably talk about, kind of along the same lines as the logging problems we've already mentioned, as finders, is there a way to make sure we've done everything we can to get the answers that the CO is looking for?
Okay. So does this relate to the discussion about questions first or last in the...
Yeah, well, kind of. Yeah, I'm just thinking kind of from the flip side. As COs, we're trying to make sure that the answers are reasonable and people are trying. But as the finders, we want to make sure we're giving the right answers and don't have to have our logs deleted. So, what kind of stuff do you do to make sure you're answering those questions correctly, basically? And that's a lot tougher. And like Houston, Texas, Dave says we need a certitude checker for Earth caches.
Oh
and
my goodness.
I would absolutely love if we could get like a standardized quiz for that, so that you could punch in your answers and
like a
know
lab
that you've qualified. Exactly.
There's probably not a hard way to do that, really. I had never thought about that angle on things.
Yeah, you could probably do a simple Google form quiz and do that.
Right, but then you're looking for a specific word or set of words, which, are you going for the geological answer, or are you going for the everyday answer?
Well, I'm thinking you do it as multiple choice.
Oh.
That way you don't have to worry about spelling. You don't have to worry about spacing or anything else. Just do multiple choice. Hey, you're here. Okay, fill this out. Which of these are the right terms?
Yeah. All interesting ideas that should be explored. Ian brought up a really good point there, though. He said, just, what? Step one is be incredibly clear in what you're asking for as the
Yes.
CO.
Yes, agreed.
And I think that goes both ways. As the so Daryl, your question was like, as the person completing the Earth cache, I would say that it goes the same way. Be incredibly clear in your answer. Don't be vague. Don't be ambiguous. Don't do that. Oh, just say, hey, this is my best attempt at it. This is what I understand you're asking for.
Yeah. I always try to do the, hey, I wasn't 100% sure of this answer, but this is what I've done. And Francis says, as a finder, should I send my answer? Actually, before we get to his, because that is a good point. But Jim Stark says, I always take pictures of any objects and plaques that are referred to, just in case I need to revisit for an answer.
Do the exact same thing. Yep.
Yeah, I do a lot of that, and I'll say, hey, I don't know what this is. If they come back and say, well, you didn't get that quite right, then I can always go back and do it. But now on to Francis's point, as a finder, should I send my answers requirements from my phone in the field or from my computer at home?
Your mileage may vary.
Well, I would say it depends on the type of cacher you are.
Yeah. Chris,
for me,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Daryl.
Oh, I was just going to say, for me, I do everything from the phone in the field now. But I take my notes and I script it out, with all my photos and everything in a separate note app. And then I have my answers that copy and paste, and I message those using, again, the geocache messenger to the CO that way. Yeah. Chris, you were going to say something though?
I was going to say, it's just a personal preference. Some people, if you're traveling in another country, say land monkeys in Russia, did you have data?
Nope.
Exactly. So you're not going to do it from a mobile device. You're going to wait till you get back. And it could be a couple of weeks before you get back. And, maybe you don't want to do it in the hotel room. You're busy, you're traveling, you're looking at things.
But
what?
Keep in mind,
pictures, I took some notes. I want to get back home and sit in front of a computer and compose this in a way that is going to do justice to the Earth cache. So,
yeah, I was going to say, but keep in mind in that scenario, I also did not log it in Russia. So my log and my answer went in at the same time, which was 2 weeks later when I was back at home.
See, and this is something that I think is important, is make sure that log and the answers come close together.
And technically, the rule,
you have to
answers
email
first,
right?
Then the log.
However, here's what I don't recommend anymore is sending what I used to do back in the pre-smartphone days was send those answers in, wait for a response, and then if I didn't get one in a couple of days, I'd still go and log it. But don't go sending the answers when you're over in Russia and logging 2 or 3 weeks later, because at that point the CO has forgotten, most likely, that you've sent those answers in. Well, so try to do it together.
If you have to delay one of the processes, that's the better way to do it.
Absolutely. But
rather than log it while you're in Russia and then wait 2 weeks to get home.
Honestly, though, like 99% of Earth cache owners are going to be fine if you send the answer and then log the find, within minutes of each other.
Yeah.
Really, it's about just making sure the answers are sent. And like I said, I said the rules are, but I mean, honestly, just as long as they both come at basically the same time, send them within 24 hours. Like, just be reasonable. And most Earth cache owners will be reasonable in response. But, if you're a jerk, you'll be treated like a jerk.
And typically I'll send the Earth cache answers right away.
Yeah.
And then I don't do my logs till end of the day. End of my caching trip.
Right. Yep.
So there is usually a gap in the way I send those, because I typically want to go through, just review, make sure I've got everything right before I hit the upload. Wet Coaster asks if we put a note instead of the found log if you're going to send the answers later.
If you're traveling and you're perhaps going to say, oh, I did an Earth cache, which one did I do? I would be okay with putting a note, hey, I found this, answers to come. As just a reminder to yourself. But
yeah, I guess you could. I've never done that. I've never been in a scenario where I've needed to do that. Every scenario I've had, I've been in a position where I could send the answers within, 12 hours at max of the same time that I'm logging it, and usually within the same hour. Very, very unlikely that I would do them differently.
And of course, you're always free to log a DNF.
Yeah,
and then
of course
that too.
You grab the last chat from Houston.
I love this one. From
Yes.
Houston, Texas, Dave. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope with a handwritten answers. Wait 2 to 4 weeks for a smiley.
Does
I
this
think
come by
it's 4
mail?
to 6 weeks.
Sorry, Chris, I missed what you said.
Oh, I think it's 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, now it is. Yeah.
Yeah. The other note that I'll put on this, and sorry for the bad pun that I just realized I stuck in there. I also take my answers and put them on the personal notes on the cache page. So that way, if someone comes back and asks, it's right there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's I don't do that, but that's a good idea.
Well, and I usually keep 2 sets of notes, to be honest. I keep the one that I'm working on with the photos and everything. And then because you can't do the photos on the cache note, which I wish they would do, I also put the answers that I submitted in the cache page.
Makes sense.
On a boat says DNFs are always acceptable.
Yeah, but you shouldn't need to DNF an Earth cache. I guess that's the thing.
Yes, but what if you really want to?
Yeah, I
I
suppose
think
you
that's
can.
the point.
If it's that important to you, log a DNF on the Earth cache. It'll certainly stand out.
I'm going to log all of your Earth caches DNF because I have not found them yet.
I suppose.
It'll give the Earth cache owner something to talk about for years.
Yeah, there you go.
Post
Fun
early, post often.
Yeah.
Oh boy, we're going to get in trouble for that one.
Just don't bring up archive parties. That's what you really get in trouble for.
Don't do that.
Well, we're going to have a DNF party instead.
Oh.
That must be fine.
What could possibly go wrong?
Earth cache owners will love you for it.
There you go.
DNF is
not needs archived.
Yep. Yeah, I guess that brings up a good point. If you go to a location and there's something really wrong about that location, so somebody sends you
No longer there.
yeah, like you go to Mount St. Helens and it's missing. No,
40 years ago that happened.
I know, right? Seriously though, like if you go somewhere and maybe here's an example. You're supposed to go to a lookout near the ocean and walk out onto this cliff or whatever and take a look out and make some observations. But the trail has been closed and there's a fence across the trail and there's a sign that says trail closed permanently or something like that. What do you do?
Go ahead.
That's an excellent point, and I was just thinking the same kind of thing when we started talking about archiving, because I think it also holds true for something at a lesser scale. What happens when the sign that's referred to in the Earth cache is replaced and no longer has information that they were asking for? So you really shouldn't. Oh, and here you go. Ian says informational signs shouldn't be used in Earth caches anyway, so hopefully we don't use that as an example. But there are many that that come up that do use it, including one of mine. And it doesn't actually refer to the information on the sign. It's just a way to make sure that people were there. It's asking for, count the leaves on the sign.
Yeah, which you're not allowed to do anymore.
No. That was an old Earth cache. One that I didn't actually create, I might add. But Wet Coaster said another good example is the dam is washed out.
What do you do there?
Too soon.
Too soon. But yeah, I don't know that I would post a needs archive, but I would definitely post a needs maintenance. Actually, needs maintenance aren't allowed on Earth caches anymore, are they?
Are they?
I don't know, but the whole dam needs maintenance.
Yeah, literally. Now you got me thinking. I'm gonna check.
Yeah, I said that, and then it dawned on me. I think they actually changed that, so that might not be an option anymore. But whatever the case, you definitely need to let the CO know exactly what's going on and why it needs attention, and they'll have to disable and modify it or archive it and create a new one.
So a couple of years ago, well, even now, get national parks are closed, state parks are closed. Do you disable your Earth caches because you're not supposed to go there and get them?
The ones that are closed in our area, I've seen a lot of those disabled because the parks are closed.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So,
but only for the parks that are closed, because not all of our parks closed.
You can log a needs maintenance on an Earth cache, but if you're doing it from the website, you have to go and click the report a problem, which is actually going to give you two options. The first option it's going to give you, which is, of course, people always click the first option, is going to be cache should be archived, which maybe don't do that. And then the other option is other, which is going to log a needs maintenance and do that, because then it prompts you to add some details. So just logging a needs archived is not going to be helpful to anybody. But if the scenario that I gave, or as Wet Coaster says, the erratic rolled away, that probably wasn't a good option for an Earth cache there. Ian says, in my opinion, a DNF and needs maintenance is the proper option for all of these to start with. Exactly. This is where I was going to bring it to their attention. So thank you, Ian. That's exactly where I was going, is log the needs maintenance by going to the report a problem, click on that. Don't say it needs to be archived. Say there's a problem with this, and then be explicit. Say, oh, I went to go do your Earth cache, but there's a fence across and there's a sign up that says this area is permanently closed. Or I went to your coordinates and the great glacial erratic has rolled away. Whatever it is. But yeah. Or as Houston, Texas Dave says, the town is under 9 feet of water. The log is wet and I couldn't sign it. Yeah. You shouldn't be signing a log for an Earth cache, but
my Earth cache is on a highway that gets closed down for a couple of months out of the year. I mean, the highway is closed every winter. It's closed. So
do you disable it and re-enable when it's open?
I do. Yes.
Wow. Good.
That is the responsible thing to do. My fear in doing that, and I've done that kind of stuff as well, is that I'm going to not realize that it's been reopened.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the trick for sure.
Oh, it is opened, is it? Oh, how about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I had at least once that comes to mind, cache that I had disabled because the park was closed. Mm-hmm. And I only found out the park was reopened when I got 4 or 5 logs all at once.
Well, you know what? But that's not a bad thing. So, in that scenario, in a boat's trying to get some clarity on Chris's Earth cache, I think.
No.
It's not about the stones in the pavement. Okay.
No, it's about stones, but not stones in the pavement.
There you go. So yeah, as you're saying, Daryl, like if you do like Chris does and you disable it, and the thing with Chris is you have a rough idea when they reopen the highway, but it's not always the same. It's not always the same date. It's weather dependent. It's like, is there enough snow off the highway that they can reopen it?
Exactly.
And if it's disabled and I'm driving the highway and I've got a disabled Earth cache, and I read through the Earth cache and I say, oh, it was disabled because the highway's closed. Well, the highway's open now. I'll log it and I'll say in my log, hey, just so you know, highway's open again. I would, if it was my Earth cache, I'd appreciate people doing that.
Yeah,
Well,
and the trouble is,
caches.
oh, sorry, go ahead again, Chris. I was talking over you.
I'll do that next time I find one of Land Monkey's Earth caches.
I was going to say the problem is a lot of people aren't going to know that Earth cache is even there if it's disabled.
All depends how you filter your maps, I guess.
Exactly. And that's the thing that worries me about doing that. And I'll still probably do it because I know that's the way it should be done. But that's my fear. So, I'd be constantly checking an Earth cache like that just to make sure, as soon as I thought it might be open. All right. Well, we've been going for quite a while, so why don't we wrap this up? We've had some great discussions, and I'm sure we're going to get a bunch more feedback. So make sure to send that in because we do have a randomized show coming up. Not all that soon, but we've got a randomized show coming up, and we'll stick it in there. But thanks again, Land Monkey, for joining us as our resident Earth cache expert.
It was my absolute pleasure. Thanks for bringing me back.
And our new resident Land Monkey. And I do have something I got to have you check. We've been having some lost packets here.
Oh.
He's like, oh, I didn't want that job.
Yeah, all right. Back in the plan. All right.
All right. Thanks again. And we do have a bunch of great shows coming up. Chris, you want to tell us about those?
I would love to. Next week, we are going to talk about Geo Dogs with Lookout Lisa and Kid Vegas 19. You know them from the Cash Advance store. And then the week after that, June 4th, we're doing Cash Notes. Hey, kind of like what we talked about tonight. To set up your favorite tools and workflows and what works for you for puzzles, virtuals, Earth caches, and your average traditional. Why not? We'll throw that in there. May 19th. No, it can't be May 19th. It's going to be the week after June 4th. We are going to talk Cashly with Nick because a brand new version dropped this week.
Yesterday, actually.
Yesterday, yeah. And then after that, show 442 for you car guys, you know which one I'm talking about, is randomized. Ooh, I want to pronounce it, but I don't know if I can. It's a randomized show, so send us your stories and let us know what you want to talk about because these are the shows that are open for your input and your guidance.
I'm going to go for Essex.
Essex?
Essex.
There we go. Yeah.
Which is more of a tongue twister than I thought. So check the Cache Maniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the Geo Gearheads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cache Maniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on the website to support the Cache Maniacs shows. Geo Gearheads is produced by Chris Offenauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2020 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with a Cache Maniacs.